So many times we're going through life and we're so wrapped in one phase that we kind of don't recognize the next phase coming. That's how many parents find themselves when it comes to being an empty nester. So, if you're in that boat, if your kids are in junior high, high school, or maybe they just graduated and you're going, what do I do now? What do I do with my time? What do I do with my dreams and my life? What does our marriage look like? What does it look like as a single mom? If those are questions that you have, you don't want to miss my conversation today. Today, I interview an author, speaker, singer, amazing. She was on Broadway. Can't wait for you to hear that story. But Kate Battistelli is joining me today. And as we talk about her new book called The Afterparty, After the Empty Nest, you don't want to miss this one. Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of That Kingdom Life. I am your host, Latoya Lackey, and I am so excited to introduce you to my guest today. She is an author, she is a speaker, she is a mom, she is a grandma, and we are going to talk about all things life and empty nest, all of the above. Please help me to welcome Kate Battistelli to the show. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, Latoya. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here. I have a confession to make. I didn't tell you this before we started rolling. I have a confession to make. I met Kate. This has been a couple of years ago now, I think,
Yeah.
at a Bible study in Franklin that we were attending, and I started following her on social media. And you made a post. I think it's probably been a year and a half ago, and I like fangirl geeked out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. You were Anna in The King and I with Yul Brynner.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Can we just talk about that for 2 seconds?
Oh, I'm telling you.
I'm the biggest King and I fan. Like that, when my mom wanted to babysit me when I was little, she was a single mom. If she needed me to be quiet for 3 hours, she would pop on The King and I, and I was glued. Like for my 40th birthday, I have to tell you this. I had been in the hospital. I had surgery, and like I had to go back in the hospital. I was really sick. But my mom, I had been out of the hospital maybe 3 or 4 days, and she had already bought me, I did not know, tickets to The King and I at TPAC in Nashville. And she was like, we don't have to go. And I was like, oh no, we're going.
Was that a few years ago? Like 5 years ago? Because I went to that too. She was great. I actually went on Instagram and messaged her just to say, hey, I'm going to come see it. I loved it. I was Anna for a bunch of years. She was like, oh, we have to meet. So we got to go backstage and meet her and meet the cast. But it was a terrific production. Very different from mine, just some of the staging and stuff, but it was great. I'm glad you got to see it.
It was, I mean, when they started Shall We Dance and twirling around the stage, I started crying, and I just turned to my mom and I was like, it still makes me want to cry. I was like, this is like my childhood is coming to life before me. Like it was the most magical moment. I started crying. I was like, this is the best birthday gift ever, Mom. I'm so happy. Like,
well, it was, since you're a King and I fan, if you want, I can tell you the story of how it happened.
Please. Yes, I would love to hear the story of how all that came to be.
Oh, I'm telling you, it was crazy. Now, remember, this is 1981, so we're way back, 40 years ago. I was a young actress in New York trying to be famous. That was my goal. I didn't grow up as a Christian, so for your audience to know that. And I went to the Episcopal Church, but I didn't have a relationship with Jesus. And I did all the wrong things that you shouldn't do when you're young, and kind of just all kinds of sin and ugliness. But I still was pursuing this goal of being an actress on Broadway, winning a Tony, all that stuff. Well,
okay, so you were in New York.
Yes, I'm in New York, a young actress wanting to be famous, that whole thing. And I get a call from my agent one day, and he says, Kate, there's a big national tour of The King and I that needs an understudy for the leading lady. Will you go out, go audition for it? So I went, I got it. And it was, that was exciting. I thought this is a great thing to put on my resume, and starring Yul Brynner, who back then, some of your younger listeners may go, who? Well, if they've ever seen the 10 Commandments, he was Pharaoh. So that might be a way to identify him. But back then he was a huge star, and he was, doing this production. And I thought, well, I'll never get it, but I did. I got cast, knowing that it's very rare that understudies are going to get to go on, especially at that level. So I
Mhm.
thought, well, it'll still be fun. It's credit I can add to my resume. And I went out on tour. And about 2 months into the run of the tour, now I knew my part because you rehearse with the stage manager. So you know your part, you know all the blocking, all that stuff. Well, about 2 months into the run of the show, I come into the theater one night, and as soon as my foot crosses over the threshold of the stage door, the stage manager runs up to me and grabs me, and he says, "She's sick, you're on." And I was like, "Holy crap." Excuse me, I probably shouldn't say
No,
that.
that's fine. No, that's
But, your life flashes
oh
before
my
your eyes
god.
because
Yeah,
this is probably the biggest part for a female in all of musical theater. It's a 3-hour show.
for
You're
sure.
on stage most of the time. There's 6 songs that I sang, 6 or I don't remember now. But I thought, well, if I don't die, this will be another good credit. But I'd been out all day. Back then, 1981, there's no cell phones, there's no computers. You can't get a hold of someone during the day. So this just totally slapped me in the face. It was like, oh my gosh, I have 45 minutes to go whistle a happy tune. That's the first song of the show. I thought, okay, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I remember standing in the wings and I thought to myself, and I've told this to my daughter many times, that sometimes you just have to do it afraid.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have I was hired to do this. I couldn't say no. I couldn't
Mhm.
walk away. I had to do it. So it was terrifying, but I did it. I ended up doing it for 2 weeks because the leading lady got sick and she had pneumonia. So I went in for 2 weeks, but then she came back. I went back to the chorus because I was in the chorus back then. But about a month later, I get a call from one of the producers and he tells me, Mr. Brynner has sent the leading lady back to New York. He's bought out her 2-year contract and he wants you in the role. I mean, that never happened.
Wow.
It's, like, so crazy, and, I
So
was
my
in
mouth is like hanging
I
open.
know, I'm just on the phone going, "Huh?" Because it doesn't happen that way, but I think because I was young, I just brought a freshness. I brought something to the show that she wasn't bringing to the show. She wasn't the right type for this show. It was, like, the perfect part for me
Right.
for some reason. God knew, he always
Yeah.
knows, but I
How
ended up
old were you?
I was 26.
Wow.
So, I was young, and at that level, they usually don't hire somebody like me. They'll always bring in somebody from New York, a more experienced actress, but he wanted me, and I really see it now. This is before I knew the Lord. I see it as his God's way, how he'll just reach down into obscurity and kind of pull you up to dance with him. I'm actually working on a book called Dancing with the King that
Ah,
someday I'll actually get to it, but it's just such a crazy story. The best part, though, my husband joined as the associate conductor. I didn't know him, but we met. I could see him down the orchestra pit because we always played big, giant theaters, and you could see the orchestra. And he's down there, learning the score because he's going to be conducting. And I'm thinking, looking at him, thinking, well, he's really cute. I got to find out the scoop on him. So, we literally met and fell in love across the footlights. It was
wow.
very, very romantic. We met, and I was with the show. He was with the show for a year, then he went off to do something else. I was with it almost 3 years, about 1,000 performances all around the country. I mean, an amazing time. But then when I finally left the show, we got married in July 1983. We didn't know the Lord. We're living in New York. We had a place down in the Village and we're pursuing fame and fortune. He's conducting on Broadway, doing all this stuff. I'm concertizing and doing a lot of different things, thinking I'm going to still get back on Broadway and earn a Tony. Well, we had a little side business and we had a gal that was helping us. She was really mentoring us in this business. And she was a born again Jewish woman, a Messianic Jew. And she
Wow.
kept inviting us to church. And she was pretty relentless. And we kept saying no. We were like, we don't need to go to church with her. But she was relentless. So I always tell people, don't stop inviting because one day you get to that point where it's embarrassing to say no one more time. And she
Yeah.
was like that. She was just like, they're going to come to church. So one week she said, you got to come Friday night. We've got this great gospel choir. So Mike and I are looking at each other going, let's just get this over with. You're just kind of like, she'll stop asking us. So we get on the train in Manhattan to Jamaica, Queens. We come out of the subway, and the theater, well, it was church in an old movie theater. And we're about 2 blocks away. We come up out of the subway and we're walking towards the church, and we're kind of sensing this like pulsing of this building. You could just, something was going on, and we thought, okay, this is kind of weird. But we walk in the doors of this church, and if you've never experienced the Holy Spirit, you don't know what's coming, and we walk in the door, and I see crutches hanging on the walls from people that have been healed, empty wheelchairs. I'm going, what foreign planet did they just drop me on? Because the Episcopal Church is not super, enthusiastic. It's pretty liturgical and it's fine, but it was nothing like this. And you hear this gospel choir who's incredible. Found out it was an all-black holiness church. And
Oh,
a
wow.
holiness church, it's men on one side, women on the other. Women
Yeah.
don't wear makeup or jewelry. You wear dresses. It's very strict. And I knew nothing about anything like this, but she takes us down to the front row. It's a big church. She and I are on one side, Mike's on the other. We're the only white faces in an all-black church.
Yeah.
Gospel choir, who were really great. She was right about the music. And the pastor, I'm certain she said, these two need Jesus. You need to do whatever you have to do to get them to raise their hand. And I don't remember what he did, but he gave that altar call. I didn't know Mike was raising his hand. He didn't know I was. So we're both, both have our hands up, go to the front, meet the Lord, March 31st, 1984. And our life was not the same, but it hadn't really changed. About a year after that, we had our daughter. And a year after that, still pursuing fame and fortune. Mike's conducting on Broadway, Radio City. He's got a doctorate in music. Everything is pointing towards this is our life. Well, about 2 years into all this, we just both are getting this sense, and we just looked at each other and said, we're not supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
I think the Lord is asking us to lay this down, walk away, which you just don't do. When you've worked your whole life to get to a certain point and God says, lay it down, it's crazy. It makes no sense. It's like Abraham, when God says, leave everything, your family, your land, your business, walk away, go to a land that I'll show you, but I'm not going to tell you, you just obey. And it was kind of like that. We didn't know what to do. But we knew this was the Lord. We got prayer, we got confirmation, which I always tell people to do. If you think God's asking you to do something crazy, make sure it's the Lord. But we knew it was. We both grew up in New Jersey, so we moved back to New Jersey with our daughter, started homeschooling way before it was cool, way before there were computers, I might add. So that was fun. But, we started that home business. I'm just being a mom, being on the worship team, all that. We eventually moved to Florida, to Orlando, where we raised Franny. And, I was just living life, doing the mom thing until she left. And that's the whole empty nest thing that we can jump into with.
Oh my goodness.
But it's been, I call them 90-degree turns, where God, you're going in one direction, 100%. God says, nope, you're turn left. You're supposed to go this way. And it's crazy. It's not easy when that happens, but when you're obedient, there's blessing in it. Not always right away. You don't always see it right away, but there's always going to be blessing in obedience.
Yeah. Now, did you guys, did you stay? God's asking you to lay down what you're doing, to leave New York. Did you stay in the music vein? Obviously, your daughter, for those of you that don't know, her daughter is a Christian singer, Francesca Battistelli. But did you stay in the music vein? Did you guys completely shift gears with the home business and the homeschooling and all of that? What did you do? You're walking away from music conducting and then singing on Broadway. What did you do?
Well, we were both part of the worship team. He was a professional trumpet player also. So he was doing that. I was singing. But there was also, in the Orlando area, there was a great dinner theater that Franny wanted to do. Oh, Mom, they're doing The Sound of Music. I want to do it. And I thought, well, if you're going to audition for something, I'm going with you, because I know the theater world.
Yeah.
you just want to be there to protect your child. She was like 9 years old. So we both auditioned. We both got in it. We did a couple shows
Oh,
like that. So we
fun.
kind of kept
Okay.
our hand in a little bit, but not for any professional reason. I was just in it to be there for her.
Yeah.
So she got a lot of experience doing that, which I think is one reason she's so comfortable on stage, because she
Mhm.
started doing it at 9 years old. Like a lot of singers and artists in the Christian
Mhm.
world, they just didn't have a lot of experience. You can always tell the difference, but she
Yeah.
did. So I do
Wow.
notice that in her. It's fun. But
Wow.
yeah, so we were still our hand in a little bit, but not thinking I'm going to go back to Broadway. I have no desire to do that.
Yeah. It's amazing when you talk about the things that God asks you to do. Like, it was always, this is totally like, we're just rabbit trailing, guys. It's okay. Y'all just hang with us. But like, one of my dreams coming up was, I wanted to be an actress. That's what I wanted to do. I didn't care if it was stage, film, whatever. That's what I wanted to do. When I was a little girl, you could ask me what I want to do. I'm going to be an actress. I mean, I was going to just move to New York and live in a small loft apartment and wait tables or something. I don't know what I had in my head.
What we all do.
Yeah, what we all do. But yeah, I got married at 17. I got married in between my junior and senior year of high school. I had my son at age 20. So my husband and I've been married 30 years this year.
Wow.
And but in that, it's like there was always a part of me that was like, man, like, what if I would have chosen a different path? What would that look like? And because you talk about like that you have no desire to go back and do that other thing that obviously you're extremely gifted in, and God opened doors for you in that way. And the way that He kind of settled that for me, I guess, if you will, is I was probably around my late 20s, early 30s, and I went and I took acting classes for a couple of summers. And I was just like, I'm going to just see, if I could have, or what there's out there or whatever. And I found out that I was really good at it and I did really like it. But then it was still my choice. Like,
Yeah.
you know what, God, I'm so happy to choose you that I don't even want that. Like, thank you for showing me that maybe I could if I
Yeah.
wanted to, but I don't want that. Like, I want you. And,
Mhm.
what does that look like when you're talking to somebody maybe that's listening right now that is, they know that they could do this one thing and it was always in their heart to do, but they're coming to that idea of, you know what, God, this might not be your path for me just because it's something I'm really good at. Like, what would you say to that person that's listening?
Yeah, I mean, just because you're good at it doesn't mean it's God's path for you, but then again, it might be. I mean, it
Mhm.
really, like anything, and I'll probably harp on this during our episode, but prayer. You got to just pray and ask the Lord, because He's always worth so much more. Like you found out,
Yeah.
He's worth more. There's nothing that we have that's as valuable as Him. And
Mhm.
it may be something you really want to do, but He says, no, lay that down. I mean, I really wanted to do it. And God said, give that up.
Mhm.
And because we did, I can see the blessing now. At the time I couldn't, but now, age gives perspective.
For
So
sure.
I would say just make sure it's not become an idol, because it's
Mhm.
so easy for our desires and our wants and this stuff. But I know I'm really good at it, but that's just being good at something is not a qualification. It's not necessarily what God wants you to do. You know what I mean? And it's hard to juggle that in your brain, because it's like, well, Lord, you gave me this gift, but it maybe there's a way that He's going to use it that's not the way
Mhm.
that you think.
Absolutely. No, I do believe that. And I think, I always think of Reba McEntire that started out as a singer and then she always wanted to act and then she ended up acting, it was like this thing that came along later for her. And so I always think, I'm like, maybe one day I'll get to, be a shadow in a movie somewhere. I don't know,
You
but I'm
never
just
know.
like, you never know, but it's all about where your heart's desire is. It truly is. And I believe God protected me from probably some bad choices that I would have made had I gone down that path, because I
Yeah.
know me. So talking about wisdom and maturity that we have, you've written a new book and it's called The Afterparty of the Empty Nest. I love the title. It says it all right there. Tell me about this book and how it came about, and what our readers need to know about, or what our listeners need to know about it.
Yeah. Well, when our daughter left home back, she was 20 back in 2007, because by this time, she was signing her record deal, going to Nashville, doing all that. And we'd been working so many years with her, just helping her navigate all this stuff. Cause there's a lot, when it's a lot. It's how do I want to say this? Um, it's a lot. It's difficult, and there's a lot of pieces to it, and you have to sort of figure that all out. So we were fully invested in that, and I'd never thought about the time when she was going to be gone and I'd be alone. I had never planned for it. It didn't occur to me. We were so busy I didn't think about it till suddenly she's gone and I'm sitting there in an empty house going, well, that was fun. Now what do I do? All those years, and what am I supposed to do? I didn't know who I was other than mom. That was my identity. And that's what happens to so many of us. We get stuck there and we think, well, that was as good as it was going to ever get. There's really nothing else. Maybe I'll get a part-time job. I just didn't know what to do. So, I mean, I can tell you the story of how God like yanked me out of that, because it's part of my crazy life. I always say my life is super quirky, but she was gone, moved to Nashville. By this point, she was getting songs on the radio. People were starting to know her name. She's becoming the it girl in Christian music. And we had homeschooled. We've been a part of a big umbrella organization in Florida, in Orlando. And the gal that ran it, she calls me one night and she says, Kate, we want you and Mike to come and speak to our parents. We're having our big 20th anniversary. Will you come and tell them, what did you do to raise your child to find her purpose and her dream, but also to maintain her relationship with the Lord? Because so many kids, they leave home and they leave the church. It's all too common, unfortunately. So what did you do? And will you come and talk to the parents? And I'm on the phone and I said, oh, sure, we'd love to come. And I hang up the phone. I look at my husband and I go, what the heck did we do?
What did we do? I don't
I
know.
don't know. I mean, you're raising your child according to biblical principles, but there's no real parenting manual that really tells you what it's like. So, but we sat down and talked about it. We came up with 15 things. And I thought, okay, well, we hung in there. We didn't do too badly. So a couple weeks later, we give our talk and it went great. Parents loved it. The next morning, I'm laid out on the floor, literally just thanking the Lord, because it was a little nerve-wracking. I hadn't done much speaking at that point other than theater, but it's different.
Different.
And, and I'm thanking the Lord. And right as I thanked him for those 15 things, I heard the Lord speak in my spirit, and he said, those are book chapters. And I was like, God, I'm not a writer. I don't want to write a book. Who's going to read a book that I write? I'm not a parenting expert. I only went to 4 colleges in 2 years. I didn't graduate from any of them. So but I got on the dean's list. So there's like no way I can write a book. No thanks. Go to the next person. But I just kept hearing it and hearing it and hearing it. Then I found out a friend of mine was a writing coach. And I thought, well, at least she knows more about writing than I do. So I've got to just let me meet with her and show her my idea. So I called her. I said, Diane, meet me at Panera. I've got something I have to talk to you about. So, over our salads, I show her these 15 things. And I said, is this a book? She looks at it. She says, yep, it's a book. I'll help you get started. You're going to write it and we're going to get it published. And I mean, then I had no choice. I kind of had to do it, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
she was right. And I mean, I got that. This was back in 2010, 2011. The book was published in 2012. So I got it done pretty quickly. And it's called Growing Great Kids, Partner with God to cultivate his purpose in your child's life. It's all about, how do you raise a child to find their purpose, to dig deep with God and find out, what is this child on this planet for? Because so many of us don't know. We kind of just raise them and think, well, they'll figure it out, which is how I was raised. I was never given any direction at all. But the Lord knew, he knew where he needed to take me. And I knew what I was good at. I knew I could sing. The acting thing came later, but I knew one thing I was good at. But it's hard. We can't let our kids drift. We have to find out. And the only way is digging deep, praying, Lord, what am I supposed to be doing with this child? How am I supposed to train them? So that book came out and I thought to myself, God, you dared me to write a book. I know that you dared me, and I know that I'm not the only one, clearly. So I started looking at scripture a little differently, reading the Bible heroes, Moses and Esther and Joseph and Ruth and all these Bible heroes to see, okay, God, how did you call them out of their comfort zone? How did you dare them? And of course, we all know, like with Abraham,
Yeah.
just go obey me and don't ask any questions.
Yeah. Go to the place, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So I saw so much of it. It's how God calls you, but I called it God dare because it felt like he was daring me, because I thought, oh my word, how do I do this? But if God calls you to it, he will equip you to do it. He has to. I mean, I could never have done it on my own. But so anyway, I wrote a blog post called the God Dare and ended up turning that into a book. But God really started, I think it was his sneaky way to get me to write, because I started a blog. When Franny left, she loved to cook. I love to cook. So I thought, well, she's in Nashville. I got to have a place to put all my recipes for her to see. So I had this little cooking blog, little food blog. But then I just thought, well, there's stuff that the Lord's teaching me. I want to write about that. And by this point, I'd been in the empty nest for a while and was enjoying it. Things were good. It was like, God, you have a whole other path for me. I have a new name. I can call myself an author, all that stuff. So I thought, it's kind of like an after party. It's a good thing. The empty nest is not a bad thing. An after party in theater, the show's closing, everybody's getting together. We're looking back at a job well done, thanking each other, having those good, intimate conversations, just kind of going over all that we did and how well it worked out. So I thought, this is kind of like that. So I wrote this blog post called Motherhood, the After Party. And it was the basis of this book. And it just marinated in me for a few years till finally I was like, just the last year, I said, I have to get this done. I have to write it, because there's so many women that are stuck. They hit the empty nest and they don't know what to do. They dread it. And then it gets there, and it's scary, because they're all of a sudden, it's a lot of loneliness, a lot of grief, a lot of mourning for what was, but they know they can't go back there. God has put an end to that. They didn't volunteer, they were drafted. There's just no way you can get away from this. That's why I have a little invitation of the book. And it says at the end, it's RSVP, no RSVP attendance is mandatory. It's like,
Yeah, right.
Mom, sorry.
I love
But,
that.
yeah,
That's
but it's
so true though, because you don't, it's like you're forced into this section of life that no one prepares you for. Like, our mothers don't prepare us for this. I don't feel like, I mean, we may have talked about it, but like society in of itself avoids this topic, it seems like, because we're so focused on when we have the kids, and we're raising them and all of that. And there's this huge section. I mean, if you're like me, where you became a mother at 20, I mean, by 37, 38, I was an empty nester. Like, I have my entire life left to lead, and and with no child in the house. So there's a good portion of your life still left to live. So what do you tell me about that? Like, how do you make that transition there? And what questions should you start maybe asking yourself to move into that?
Yeah, you want to start planning now. If you're coming into the empty nest, you're not in it yet, start thinking about it now. Don't wait. There's lots of things. I mean, this is the time to really press into your marriage, because that can get all messed up when the kids leave. But you really have to start planning, because no matter what book you read, even mine, no one can really tell you what it feels like. That loneliness that hits when you see that empty chair at the dinner table, even if they're going one by one, you're still going to feel it when that oldest one goes. It's hard. It's just, you can't, it's hard to wrap your brain around till you're in, but it is survivable. It's definitely survivable. And like you said, you have the whole rest of your life. You've probably got at least 40 years left, right? Well, what are you going to do with that? Sit in a puddle of tears? I've talked to some moms that they're like, oh, it's been 3 years and I just can't seem to get out of this. I'm like, 3 years, honey, you need to get moving. That's too long to sit in self-pity, because we can get stuck in that. And it's easy to. I did. I mean, I was just like, this is horrible. Nobody told me. Plus menopause, you add that on. It's like, thanks, Lord. Thanks for adding that right when we're feeling miserable. It's like,
that's what I did. Like, within 2 weeks of my son moving out, I had a full hysterectomy, so I hit it
Oh,
all at
God.
once. I
So
was
that
actually kinda glad to be in the hospital because he was moving out during that time, and so I didn't have to, like, help him move his stuff out, so that
yeah.
was really good.
Yeah,
But, yeah, it's hard. I mean, I
it is
know my little Bella, those of you that follow me on social media, my little chihuahua, I called her my replacement child for forever because his senior year, I was crying once a week because I'm like, he's going to be gone. He's going to be gone. And I told my husband, we'd been arguing about getting a dog for about 7 years. And finally I was like, look, if you don't like the dog, you can, I've been an obedient wife for 7 years and not brought one home, but you can go live in the garage because the
Yeah,
kid's moving out. We're either going to have a baby or get a dog. And I vote on getting a
seriously.
dog.
Oh my gosh. That's funny. Well, if you think about you've got those 40 years, okay, what's the other reason God put you on this planet? It
Yeah.
not to sit around, not to go shopping or go out to lunch. Those things are fine, but you're not that can't be your focus.
Um,
We have to leave a legacy. We're here to change the world, but we
mhm,
have to choose to be chosen. I can
mhm,
say yes or I can say no to what the Lord's calling me to. And all your listeners, if they know what it is, they can say no. I mean,
mhm,
plenty of people do. But if you want to change the world, and if you think about the era of the world that we're in, that God saved us to the end times.
mhm.
I could have been born in 1850 or
Yeah,
1250, but
right.
God saved me. He saved every single one of us who's listening. He saved us to the end.
Yeah.
And why did he do that?
Hi, TKL family. Thank you so much for watching That Kingdom Life. Part of our mission here at Latoya Lackey Ministries is to help people understand hope, identity, and freedom. So we not only want to equip you with good, sound biblical teaching, but we also bring in people to have conversations, interviews, topics, all of the things. Now, this is a listener supported podcast. What that means is that we don't have sponsors, we're not getting paid from other avenues. So I want to ask you sincerely, will you consider partnering with us? Not only are you going to help us to bring good content and quality to this show, but also your money goes to help support other things like the furtherance of the gospel. We have 4 trips planned overseas this year, and we are going into places where they can't afford to pay us to come. We're having to pay our own way. It's a missions trip, right? And we are going to equip leaders in churches. There's church planting happening. We're also going to do a couple of kids camps this year. And this is all in conjunction with a ministry friend of mine as well. And so we are, spreading the gospel, and we're doing the things that Jesus has told us to do, to train up, to empower, to equip, to release disciples, making disciples. So will you please consider becoming a partner with Latoya Lackey Ministries? You can do that by going to latoyalackeyministries.com/give and become a monthly partner or sow a one-time gift. If you want to give towards missions, you can put a note in there for that as well. But every dollar helps, and I would so appreciate it. And I know that we are furthering the gospel together.
It's not for you to just have nothing to do. It's because there's a specific
Mhm,
purpose for your life from before the foundation of the world. People
mhm,
need they need you. They need me. They need all of us to be building the kingdom. What's the kingdom business he's calling you to
mhm.
do? And that's what I ask your listeners. What is that thing?
Yep.
You might have known since high school that thing's been bugging you that, man, when my kids are gone, I know I want to do this, or I know God's calling me to it.
Yep.
A lot of you may be like me who did not have a clue, but through prayer, through counseling, through good advice, and through just the Lord starting to talk me into writing, I
Yeah.
figured it out. And it opened up a whole new world to me. There's so
Mhm,
much more than we think. God has so much for you if you're willing to step out. It takes
mhm,
courage. It'll probably be scary. It'll definitely be hard because, like, being a writer, being a podcaster, you don't just get up one day and say, I think I'll do that. It takes study, it takes work, it takes
yeah.
hours, it takes saying no to things, you
Mhm,
know? And I'd love to go out with my friend and go shopping, but I've
mhm.
got a deadline. You know
Yeah.
how that is.
Yep.
There's a price to pay. There's a
Mhm.
price for the anointing, there's a price for the kingdom, there's a price for being used by the Lord. Are we willing to pay the price? And I'll tell you a quick story. Have you heard of Reinhard Bonnke? Do you know who he
Oh,
is?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
well, for your listeners that don't know, he was a huge evangelist in Africa. He was
Mhm.
like considered the Billy Graham of Africa. Millions came into the kingdom through his ministry. Well, one day the Lord told him at the height of his ministry, God told him, "You were not my first choice.
Mm,
You were my third choice." I mean, imagine, first of all, how humbling that is for him.
mm,
But all I can think of is those two other men.
yeah.
They get to heaven and God says, "Look what I had for you," and you turned it down. I mean, it
Mm,
gives me chills even talking to you about it, because knowing I didn't meet the Lord till I was 29, all the years I missed all of what he may have had in my book for me to do that I couldn't do. So at
mhm,
my age, I'm like, God, I don't want to miss one more thing. But the fruit that you miss when you say no to the Lord, and it's
mm,
easy to. I mean, we could have said no when God told us to move because we were young Christians, like, well, maybe
mhm,
we don't hear him right. We knew our the lady who led us to the Lord, she knew, she confirmed it. And it's it's not easy to follow God. It's not easy to be a Christian. I tell
yeah.
people that all the time because we think, "Oh, I read my Bible, I go to church every week." No, Jesus said it's death to self, and that's heavy. I don't know if you want to go
Mhm,
heavy deep like that, but it's a narrow road, and
yeah.
few find it. But to find it, you first have to be willing to say yes to what is that thing he's calling you to. And the
Mhm.
only way you'll say yes is if he's the love of your life. If
Yeah,
he's more
I think
than anything.
yeah, we have to get to a place where we we're real big around here on hope, identity, and freedom. That's our whole ministry is around that. And so when you're understanding your identity in Christ and who he uniquely made you to be, those things would just begin to ooze out and bubble out of you. Like you said, that writing, it wasn't anything that you planned, but it just started bubbling out of you. And
Mhm.
then God was like, yes, that's the thing. And here's
Yeah,
what I want to do with that. So it's like sometimes it's scared to step into those baby steps of
mm,
what's burning in your heart, but and especially when you're in that transition period, of okay, what do I want to do for
yeah.
the rest with the rest of my life,
Mhm.
because there's so many things. Like I know my husband and I, when we became empty nesters, we went through a phase. It's kind of funny now. I was telling a friend of mine about this the other day, but because they have their first teenager in the house right now,
Oh,
and I was
fun.
like, "You just wait, you're gonna breathe, and then they're gonna be gone, and then you're
Yeah.
gonna have to figure some things out." But I was telling them, I said, when our son moved out, we decided, because I was very adamant about like we don't. I kept telling my husband, we don't have any hobbies together. Like we need some hobbies together. It's about to be me and you and me, boy. Like
That's a good thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
we got to figure this out. Like, we better come up with something. So, like, he's trying to take me to play golf. He bought me golf clubs, which was the sweetest thing. I am not a golfer. Like, that was the
Me
biggest
either.
money.
I'm
Um,
terrible.
it was so sweet. Like the thought that, oh, you want to take me golfing? That's taking me into your man cave. I'm so happy. But what we ended up doing was we started having date nights on Friday nights, like we had never had. I'm talking like we dropping some dollars on some steak on Friday night. Like we would get dressed up. He was a mechanic. He had a mechanic shop at the time, and so he was very blue collar. So I mean, he would come home and like we're getting on button up shirts and the whole. Did you make reservations for us? Yes, I did. I mean, like we started to date each other, which
Mm.
was amazing. I mean, we found romance again. We had sexy September where we were every day of the month we were finding each other somewhere. And so it was, I mean, we discovered each other again, which has been a beautiful journey, like because now here we are 10 years into that empty nest, and he truly is my best friend and confidant, which I don't think we wanted when the child was there, but we couldn't fully have because you're wrapped up in football and school and
Yeah.
all the things. And so we were very intentional about trying to make sure that we were falling in love with each other, focusing on
Yeah.
each other during that time. So that was kind of our transition that first year or
Mhm.
so. We took a lot of like little weekend trips and just things that we hadn't allowed ourselves to do, because you have other priorities, but
Mhm.
all that wears off after a little bit, and you can't afford dinner every Friday night like that. So like what do you do? And so I love that of just beginning to find out, and I would encourage those of you watching, like finding out with your spouse, like what do
Mhm.
we want? Sometimes it's a matter of just dreaming out loud. Like if
Mhm.
money and time and location were not a hindrance, what would you do? What would you do as a couple? What would you do as individuals in business or in ministry or just in life? And I love that you said that 90-degree turn, because he's
Mhm.
done that so often in my life, just a complete, turn that's like, wow, I didn't see that coming, but I'm so glad that I made that
Yeah.
switch, right? So how do you advise people, like, talking around that, or what was that like for you guys as you began to make that turn together maybe?
Yeah, you just basically did the chapter on marriage in my book,
Oh,
because it's all about that. Because we can get lost in the kids. They can become that buffer, especially if there's issues between you and your husband. That those kids are the kind of the buffer that you're not going to really deal with. That you can just keep that at bay. But once the kids are gone, that stuff's going to bubble up. So I tell parents, especially if your kids aren't already gone, do exactly what you did. Start having date nights. Now, I have a whole list of date night ideas in the book, because we think it's going out to dinner, which is wonderful to do, but there's a million things you can do. Take a cooking class together, go get massages, have a picnic on your living room floor if money's an object, switch with another couple. You watch their kids one week, they take, there's a
Yeah.
million ways, but keeping your marriage fresh, because he was there in the beginning. He's going to be there when they're gone. And you don't want to get to your empty nest and look at each other and go, I don't even know who you are. I don't
Yeah.
even know if I like you. There's a phenomenon that's very saddening, disheartening to me, called gray divorce. And it's
Mm.
becoming all too common, where they get to the empty nest, or they get to their 40s, 50s, and they have nothing in common, and they get divorced. They
Mm.
they can't relate to each other anymore. And that's not uncommon at all among empty nesters. And it's very sad, but it's because they're not planning ahead of time, coming up with what are those hobbies? What are those things they like to do together? Because it's your husband first, then
Mhm.
the Lord first, then your husband, then your children. And if
Right,
your husband's not first,
right.
that's something to really look at and try to fix as best you can. Because, I just hate to see that among parents whose kids have gone, or old, even as they get older, like my age. There's a lot of divorce among the baby boomers. You're just like,
Yeah.
really? I mean, I couldn't imagine, because my husband,
No.
he's amazing. We're best friends, like you said. We talk about everything. We do everything together, except he doesn't write, which would be really nice if he could take a couple chapters. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, marriage is so critical. Just
Yeah.
like you're pouring into your kids, you have to make time for it. And the
Mhm.
good thing, I think the best thing about the empty nest is you do have more time. For some
Mhm.
of us, we think, oh, what am I going to do? But for others, it's like, man, I can go with my friends to lunch. I can take a weekend away. I can go get that facial or that new hairstyle, whatever, because I don't have to worry about taking anybody to practice. I
No.
don't have to worry about helping with homework.
I can do
It's
whatever I want.
whatever I want, and figure out what this next step is, even just financially.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we took our grandkids to Chick-fil-A recently, 6 of the 7. It was $100 at
That's
Chick-fil-A. I
easy.
just thought, if parents have to deal with this all the time, I don't know how you afford it. But then suddenly, you don't have to spend that money anymore. It's like your
Mhm.
grocery bill goes down, way
Mhm.
less laundry to do. There's so many things that open up. And also those dreams, those things you've been thinking about, or maybe have
Mhm.
felt that drawing, like, God, I've always felt like I'm supposed to start this business, whatever it is. Now you can do that. I always felt like I wanted to go into politics. Well, start
Mhm.
finding a politician to volunteer for, or to
Mhm.
just go work for. There's a lot of things, and you can start doing those things before the kids are gone. There's
Mhm.
lots of things. If you think I'm supposed to go back to college, well, you maybe don't have to do it all at once. Take one class a year, but then when you're done, when the kids are gone, you're way ahead of where you would have been if you'd done nothing. So
Yeah.
you can start doing a lot of things now before that nest empties. Figure out
Mhm.
if you know what that thing is, if the Lord's showing you, or even if it's just something you love to do.
Mhm.
Start learning about it. Start getting out and doing whatever you can to
Mhm.
start making that happen. And again, like me, the Lord may take you on a 90-degree turn. You may think, I'm supposed to do this. And God says, no, you're supposed to go into ministry, or whatever it is. But just be open to his voice, pray, ask him to show you, but You can't sit around. I'll give you 2 months. You can mourn for 2 months. You can mourn for the summer. But then because you've got the whole rest of your life, and you
Yeah.
don't wanna get to heaven and God says, "You missed it. This is what I
Yeah.
had for you. Yes, you went to church, you were a good Christian, but you didn't do what I called you to do."
Mhm.
I just that scares me probably more than anything, that I
Mhm.
get there and find out I didn't accomplish his purpose for my life,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. No, and I totally agree with that, and I think it's the I really wanna encourage you guys that are watching this to sit down. If this is you, if your kids are in junior high, okay? Like, go ahead and start this now. Like, sit down with a notepad and just literally go outside and just dream for a minute. Just be
Mhm.
like, "What would life look like if I had no time constraints, if I had no one to care for, if I had nowhere to be? Like, what would that look like?" Because I even run into this with friends that are single, that don't have any kids and stuff. And I'm like, do you realize how amazing that is? Like, you have no one to answer to. You could
Yeah.
sell everything you want and go be a missionary if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Nobody can tell you. I mean, like, you can do whatever. And I'm not saying that we can all do that, obviously, but it's interesting that when you allow your mind to start to dream, call it creating with God. When you start to imagine
Mhm.
with God, what are the possibilities? What
Yeah.
could we do? Maybe I do need a job change. Maybe I do need a career path change. Maybe this career served me when I had kids at home, but now I could go and do this thing that I really couldn't do when the kids were there, because maybe
Mhm.
that involves traveling or that involves
Right.
later nights or whatever. And so, we make sacrifices as parents, and we often put ourselves, rightly so, usually on the back burner with a lot of things because we're caring for our kids, we're caring
Yeah.
for our family. But when you're an empty nester, it's the opportunity for you to be able to say, okay, now I get to birth something else, not another human, but I get to birth a dream. I get to birth, like you said, that book. Or like me, you get asked to do a podcast out of the blue and you're like, what? All of that. So, like, you never know what God's going to open up when you start to dream with Him. And I absolutely love that idea. I love
Mhm.
that idea. So, what in your book, I know, we've talked about kind of that preparing for the phase, we talked about marriage. What else is in your book that you would like for the listeners to know?
I have a chapter for single moms because that's a whole 'nother level of loneliness, because you don't
Yes.
have a husband to come home to and all of a sudden your kids are gone.
Yeah.
That's harder, but you also have more freedom. You
Yeah.
also have more money. God also has a plan for you, and you have a little more freedom because you're not married. You can do things that maybe if you were married, you wouldn't be able to do. So there can be a lot of good for single moms as well. And then I have a chapter on prodigals, because there are a lot of prodigals today. There's so many kids that move out and walk away from the Lord. And that's a hard thing, but it's also knowing that the Lord knows.
Mhm.
Jesus leaves the 99 to go for the one. And if
Yeah.
your child is the one, he knows better than you do. He loves them more than you do. So your job is just pray, intercede, trust the Lord,
Yeah.
because it is hard, but there is a little bit of revival starting to happen, specifically among young men are coming back to the church.
Mhm.
It's interesting to me, and I love that they are. So I think the culture's gotten so messed up and ugly, and social media and all the lies, that young people are looking for something authentic. They're
Yes.
looking for something that's real.
Yes.
So, pray that for your kids. I have some family members that don't know the Lord, and I pray all the time. I'm like, Lord, send ambassadors into their lives,
Yes.
ambassadors of your grace. They're not going to listen to me, but they
Mhm.
might listen to them.
Yeah.
How always somebody else that's going to bring you in, typically than your family, if you're not raised as a Christian.
Mhm.
So pray that God drenches them with his Holy Spirit, just
Yeah.
overwhelms them. It's
Mhm.
amazing what prayer does. We all know, but consistent intercession for them can bring
Mhm.
them back. No
Yeah.
matter how bad or ugly it may look, God can bring them back. I mean, story of the prodigal son. Read
Mhm.
that and know that the father is Jesus. It's God
Mhm.
going after your child. So those are in the book. I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to
Let me ask you this, because speaking of that younger generation, I agree with you 100%. I believe that the 20 somethings are really waking up, and they're coming back to the Lord in powerful ways right now, especially. What I know mentoring is on your heart, and that it's a place where you feel passionate about the need for mentoring and what that looks like. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Well, I really feel there's just a gaping hole in the church today. The
Mhm.
older are not teaching the younger. The Titus 2 woman, I can't say she's disappeared, but she's few and far between, women who really are willing to step out and pour into younger women,
Yeah.
because we need that. The younger women are desperate for it. They're trying to navigate this culture. Many of them are crying out, and they've asked women, and women have said no, which just makes me mad, because I'm thinking anyone who asks me, I absolutely work with them and spend time. I think a lot of older women probably think it's too hard. I don't know what to do. Do I
Mhm.
really want to? I don't want to come out of my comfort zone. I think maybe we think I've got to do a Bible study every week. No, all I do is we meet for coffee, we talk on the phone.
Yeah.
I try to ask her questions, not give advice. Just be there. Somebody that they can trust, that's going to guide them in godly principles, because those are dying in the church.
Yes.
Just reverence, taking care of your husband, teaching these girls how to be homemakers, how to live modestly, how to have integrity, all this stuff that's our culture is eroding.
Yeah.
It's just chipping away at all those things. Even I just see the way people dress sometimes. I'm like, do
Mhm.
they really know Jesus? I
Yeah.
mean, you're wearing that to church, and you don't want to be judgmental, but at the same time, I grew up in such a different era
Yeah.
that manners were important,
Mhm.
saying hello and being able to shake hands. Young people don't know how to do this stuff, which blows my
We've
mind.
lost that connection, I feel like, with the generations. Like, people don't have family dinner anymore. They don't, there's not a, like, I know my son's generation, it seems like him and all of his friends, I mean, it's like their whole generation, it feels like they're very community centric with each other. They're very intentional about that, but there's not a lot of legacy, hanging out with great grandma and things like that,
Yeah,
and like Sunday dinners. And I feel like my generation missed that. Like, it wasn't handed down to us. And so we missed handing it down to our kids, I
yeah,
feel like. And now we're really starting to see the effects of that a couple of generations down. So that's something that's missing. And like you said, I think they're hungry for it. Sometimes they don't even know they're hungry for it, but they are. So what do
yeah.
you do? You're a woman that is seasoned, that has experience in mentorship. You have an empty nest now, so you have room in your schedule to pour into that next generation. What do you do? How do you form that relationship with, maybe you don't have any kids around you, but you would be willing, is that
Mhm.
through church? Like, do you chase them down? Like, I don't know. Tell me about
Well,
that.
it
How
just
does that connect?
depends, through just relationships that build. I'm in the choir at my church, and there's a gal in the choir, and somehow she saw my book, The God Dare, and realized that I'd written it, and she read it, and she just was drawn to me, and we connected, and we become friends. And she's, gosh, 20, 30 years younger than me, but she'll pick me up, we'll go to choir together, we do all kinds of stuff together, and that just happened naturally. Typically, it's just through being friendly at church. We have a life group every Tuesday. Sometimes it comes through that, because I invite anybody really who's breathing, who wants to come.
Yeah.
Just because it's a great place. We eat, we have fellowship. It's a really good time to connect. So I've had some women out of that I've been able to mentor.
Mhm.
I think just be available. If you can tell that somebody is dealing with stuff, just say, "Hey, how can I pray for you?"
Yeah.
It can be as small as that, and I think, we want that. Younger women want that, and they maybe feel embarrassed to talk about it, or don't know how, or don't think anybody's gonna understand. I try to always let them know early on how messed up I was,
Right.
all the bad things I did, so that it's like, you can tell me anything. Nothing will surprise me, because I've either
Yeah.
probably done it, or, know somebody who has. You're not gonna shock me with your
Right.
issue.
Yeah.
And letting them see that you're real. You're not putting expectations on them. You're not, "Well, I want you to be this," and it just
Right.
let them be them. as you work with them and spend time with them, hopefully they're going to see things in you that they want to emulate, that they're going to want to be reverent in their behavior. That's one of the Titus 2 ones, live with integrity, be moderate in the stuff that they do. Don't drink too much wine, which I've been there and done that. So I understand that. All these things that we don't want to talk about, but are so critical. And what I've found, I get just as much from them as they get from me, because I'm learning from them about the culture and about all the stuff that I think a lot of older women, they're intimidated because they don't know all the technical stuff. They're not good on social media. They may not even be on Facebook. They don't know all these things, and they think, well, they're not going to want to have anything to do with me because I'm not as cool as them, or I'm not going to be able to relate. But that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for a woman who's full of integrity, who's lived longer and walked longer with the Lord, that can have some perspective on life, So I think if someone asks you, please say yes. And if you're wanting to be mentored, find that woman in your life that you admire and just say, hey, you don't have to say, will you mentor me? Just, hey, I'd love to get together for tea. And it can be, maybe she loves to garden. We'll have her come help you, or she loves to do a craft. It can be anything. It can be a Bible study if you want it to be, but I tend to go much more just regular, normal stuff. Let's meet for coffee kind of thing. Because it's easy and it's safe.
Yeah, it is. And like you said, they're living life. They're just looking for somebody to talk out life about life through. I mean, it's just
Absolutely.
I know I wish I would have had more of that, thank goodness I did. But I did exactly what you're saying. I gravitated towards one particular woman at our church that was a few years older than me, and, had wisdom and experience. And, she's my spiritual mama. I mean, and she helped to raise me, and she would correct me, and, all the things coming up. And I'm so thankful for her taking time. She had her own hands full with her own children, but she took time with me. So I'm so thankful for that. So go ahead, Kate.
I was just going to say, and for you women that are now in your empty nest, you can mentor younger women. Who's that mom that's got little ones and you're just like, oh Lord, I just need to help her out. Even if it's as simple as, can I come watch your kids for a couple hours, or bring her a meal? There's so many ways you can mentor a younger woman that'll give you just so much, I don't know, just so much peace and joy. It's amazing to see, as you pour into somebody, how it helps change them. So be that Titus 2 woman. Even if you're wanting one for yourself, you can still be that to her and help her out, especially moms of littles. They need somebody who's dealt with this. It's like, what do I do with a screaming 2-year-old and a 5-year-old who's throwing a temper tantrum, and a 12-year-old who's starting to go through puberty? It's a lot. It's a lot. And they need you to say, you're going to get through. You're going to live.
You're going to live. You're going to survive. Trust me.
You're going to survive.
You're going to survive. I love that. This has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Kate, for being on here. How can people find you? How can they find your book? Are you speaking anywhere? Tell people how to connect with you.
Yeah, they can find me katebattistelli.com. Pretty simple. All my social media handles are just Kate Battistelli. I am speaking, I don't know when this is going to come out, but at a big homeschool conference the first weekend of June in Richmond, Virginia. So if anybody's coming to that, come say hi. Another thing, I have a little offer for your listeners, that if they want to get the first chapter, the introduction and the first chapter to the book for free, all they need to do is text Afterparty, like all one word, no space, just Afterparty to 44144, and that will get sent to them. And it's, it'll give you a real good idea of the book, where it's going. I have a companion journal coming out, I'm hoping by the middle of June, that goes a little bit deeper into the empty nest, and is a great place for women to really think through. It's a 31-day devotional journal companion to the empty nest. So that's coming. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're doing that. Yeah, I'm a journaler. I write in every book that I get. I'm writing in the margins. I'm doing all the things. So I love that you're going ahead and doing that. Not enough authors
Yeah.
do that. Do that,
Yeah.
guys, if you're writing a book. Have
Yeah.
a workbook to go along with it for people like me that need that. So thank you so much again, Kate, for joining us. This has been a great conversation. I know that many are going to be encouraged by your words of wisdom. And I hope that you guys watching, if you are in that empty nest phase or soon to be in that phase, I hope that this episode has given you some hope, some things to look forward to, that you're not losing in life, but you're actually gaining a whole new second chapter. It's going to be amazing. The after party is rocking. I'm telling you, it's so much fun. So thank you guys for joining us here today on That Kingdom Life, and we will see you next time. Have a good one. Hi, His Glory family. Thank you so much for watching this episode of That Kingdom Life. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Kate Battistelli. And if you want to see the full conversation or any extras, go on over to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit subscribe when you get there. And just to give you that number one more time, if you want that first chapter of her book for free, text the word Afterparty to 44144. Afterparty, all one word, to 44144. I hope that today's episode really encouraged you. I know it encouraged me. I'm 10 years empty nester, but there's so many phases of life and so much life left to live. It helps me to sit down and dream again and create with the Lord. And I can't wait. I'm 47. I can't wait to see what the rest of my life looks like, because there is more to you than being a parent, or even in being a spouse. There is more to you than that. There's someone that God has created you to be. I hope that you are stepping into that you're stretching and spreading your wings a little bit, and that today's episode not only gave you hope and encouragement, but I hope that it gave you a little bit of bravery to step into that thing that God has for you. The rest of your life is going to look amazing. I can't wait to see. We'll see you next time here on TKL.